to the IdeaGen Global Partnership Summit live here in New York City during UNGA and Climate Week. I am honored to be here today with a good friend, colleague, supporter, and believer in the IdeaGen Global mission, Gretchen O'Hara of Splunk, Cisco.
Yes.
Would that be right?
That was right, George. Thank you. That's a great introduction.
And so I'd love for our global audience, you've introduced yourself in the past, but I'd love an update from you.
Absolutely. So long time advocate and advisor here for IdeaGen. I've been in technology my entire career, so we'll just leave it at 30 plus, so we won't date myself there. But I think one of the things that has been really important to me through my career is how does technology intersect in building a more sustainable future for all of us. And that intersected into also our women and girls and sort of the, I would say, inequities in technology, in particular in STEM, on trying to help really bring that sort of equitable, diverse thought into that sector as well. So that was kind of my background. In order to do that, George, I had to do it through partnerships. Yeah. And very early on, it was really about the power of partnerships and what you could do to really scale your initiative, your goal, objective in a very positive way around the globe. And so that was a very sort of framing for me of how I've spent my life. So now coming to Splunk, leaving 18 years at Microsoft, doing a variety of executive roles there, Splunk was really exciting to actually build a new modern ecosystem of partnerships and alliances across the globe to really help focus on what we are experiencing now, and we hear from many of the colleagues today around the massive explosion of data, the power and energy to support AI. And Splunk really is designed to build digital resiliency against all of the threats, against bad actors, against everything that is trying to totally penetrate your company, and making sure that you and the company and your data and you as a consumer are safe. So Splunk was an incredible opportunity to do that. And as you'd mentioned, Cisco believed that as well. And so Cisco acquired Splunk. And so now I'm part of Splunk as the channel chief Cisco company.
Well, that's incredible. I mean, it's just a perfect partnership and an opportunity for you all to take what Splunk has already done and bring it into Cisco, which is an incredible global company, and create more impact.
Absolutely.
So that's really what we're talking about here. And so what is an overview of that partnership like? So you've been acquired, right? Technically, is that?
Technically acquired, very strong partnership. And one of the things that Cisco, if you're not familiar with Cisco, one of the largest global networking companies in the world. If you think about all of the data that passes through the global world of networking, Cisco owns the majority of the traffic through that. So security becomes a major component of that. Understanding the information as you're rolling out applications and being able to make sure that you as a consumer can get onto Amazon, make sure everything is working in the way that you want it ordered, that becomes a massive opportunity to make sure that that digital resiliency is built. Now compound AI and the explosion of AI and the explosion of AI in the data centers and the amount of compute that takes. So Splunk was a natural sort of growth engine for Cisco to say, hey, we have the largest networks in the world. You have the best ability to protect all of that information. What can we do if we come together?
Incredible.
And so the incredible scale on that, I think we will be seeing lots of excitement coming from that space.
And so, Gretchen, you've been on the forefront at Microsoft, channel chief. You're doing the same now, but in a different global sort of role with Splunk and Cisco, and you're in this merger world, which is incredible as well. And I know, because you've said it, it's incredibly exciting.
Very exciting, yeah.
And I'd love your thoughts on what is ubiquitous now, which is AI. I mean, we've talked about it today. What is happening specifically, what do you see?
Yeah.
What do you see coming at us with AI?
Yeah, I think the thing that I think you'll hear a lot of people say is that there's not a conversation you will have that won't have AI in it. And I mean that from the boardroom in corporations and what the plan is strategically to roll out AI, to at the kitchen table on ChatGPT and what was the great essay that you wrote, in a letter of recommendation. I mean, it is impacting all of us in very different ways. But the challenge with AI still today is that there's a lot of bias in the system. We're here, really focusing on SDG goals, and the reality is that there are still inequities in how you're feeding those models and generative AI. And this thought that AI is going to take over the world, I think AI is going to make it a better world in terms of being able to see the opportunities, being able to consume massive amounts of data in a very short amount of time, being able to make lives easier and productive. However, I'm a big believer, and Splunk's a big believer in human in the loop. And what I mean by that is when you are protecting the governments, federal companies, large global enterprises of information, the last thing you would want to do is react to something that may be an anomaly, may be something that's not actually accurate in Gen AI. You want to be able to cull massive amounts of data and present to your analysts, hey, here's the 5 things you should look at. But I don't think you want to get to a place where there's not somebody saying, I'm going to go look at that. And that's the difference where I think depending on what sector and what you're using AI for, you will see that, AI will continue to run. But just in, we've seen lately sort of just discrepancies in what AI results come out when you ask, questions on ChatGPT. So we have a lot of work to do to take bias out of the system. And we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we bring the equity back into technology so that we have diverse perspectives to be able to do that. And that's a lot of the work that, Splunk is focused on with Cisco.
And that's so incredibly exciting. I think that to your point about what it gives you back, I asked ChatGPT during the Monday Night Football games, what are the scores?
Yeah.
And what it gave me back was that it gave the previous week's final scores as if it happened on Monday night.
Well, that's right. And if you didn't know better,
and if I didn't know better, I'd be living in.
You'd be living that. I'll give you a great example on the same scores. My family has a fantasy football, fun way to stay connected. My husband does the ChatGPT. I'm going to, get the best draft of whatever. And my son, who's a football nut, is like, that's the most ridiculous document I've ever seen. Because it was a culmination of things that if you didn't know enough,
right.
If you didn't have human in the loop, you would just go with what you saw. So I think there's a lot for us to learn.
Right.
I think it's an exciting and explosive area. But I think there's more for us to do.
Human in the loop.
Yeah.
Human in the loop is key. And so you have an incredible record of building these partnerships. What, Gretchen, is your approach to developing partnerships?
Yeah. I think the first thing is you got to meet the opportunity. Same thing with Splunk and Cisco, an incredible opportunity that we will work on for the future. I think when I'm building partnerships, they come in all shapes and sizes, and it's about what is the opportunity, and then what is the 1 + 1 = 3. And everyone's like, Gretchen, that's such bad math. But it's something I subscribe to, because the reality is when you bring up a partnership, public and private partnership, it can be ways to be able to get into new markets. It could be ways to help solve some of the goals we're here talking about today. The power of partnerships gives you the force multiplier that normally you cannot get it on your own. And I would subscribe that we have recognized in the industry, and I would just say in the private sector, you can't go alone. on this. You can't do it. And if you find the right partnerships that are all aligned on the goals of where the opportunity is, right? Where the opportunity ahead is, you do get 1 + 1 = 3 because you get this accelerated, amplified way of which you can go after the goals in a way that alone you can't.
It's incredible to hear. And so as you share these lessons with us today, what is a lesson that has impacted the way you create these partnerships? Like, what is that secret sauce for your methodology?
Yeah. So I think there's kind of boils down to a few simple things. And I think we'll hear a lot about partnerships today. But the first is, do you have mutual objective, mutual goals together? Are you aligned? We talk a lot about ethos. We talk a lot about like shared DNA. Do you, and it could be very different types of organizations, people, but if you have a shared vision, there's an opportunity. Then it's around making sure that you are listening, and that I think you have a lot of humility in those partnerships, because partnerships by nature means that you come together. It's 50-50 thing where you come together. And when you don't really recognize the other person's value, or you don't actually have clarity on what each other brings to the table, those partnerships can break down. So active listening, leading with humility, I think, and empathy, and making sure that you're aligned and communicating on the best shared vision. And you can see some of the strangest partnerships come together, and they're incredibly successful because it's purpose-driven, and people are very clear on the outcome of what you want to accomplish.
It's incredible to hear your vision on that, because what is a common theme, you're right, is partnerships, and the fact that no one entity, no one company, not even just the UN, can do it on their own.
That's right.
Right? That's the lesson here. And so as you look at something you referred to at Splunk as the power of listening, I really like that, the power of listening. We could all learn from that, power of listening. How has it strengthened relationships for Cisco, Splunk especially, right? Because you coined that term. Why is that so powerful?
Well, I think, first of all, when you are heard and you feel that your problems and what you're trying to accomplish and your business outcomes are really heard, there's a trust that's built immediately. And that's with the partnerships that I build across the world. It's with our customers that we jointly come together with and serve, because they're partners. They're customers, but they're partners. And so if you think of and reframe everything in terms of partnerships that you can mutually benefit from, that power of listening then, in my opinion, helps us accomplish those goals faster, because we are actually coming to the table and understanding what we're trying to get done together. And that also is the last thing I will just sort of lead back into my passion around sustainability and sort of this equitable future, which Cisco believes in, building an equitable future for all, and Splunk a huge part of that. Leading Splunk's ERG as the accountable executive there for the women's ERG. One of the things I think is just so important is that you have to have diverse perspective. You have to have diverse perspective. And if you don't incorporate the power of listening, you don't have other perspective.
That's right.
And when you have a diverse perspective of thought, the innovation, the opportunity, the creation for us to be able to get things done in my corporate life, in my private life, in us, and what we're trying to do here globally is sort of unstoppable. So it's an important one that we practice.
Oh, I love that. I'm a huge fan of listening. I try to listen. There's a lot of different ways to describe that.
There is, yeah.
But I'd like to shift now to something that's near and dear to IdeaGen, and that is the IdeaGen Foundation, which is future global leaders. So we have, and we've heard from so many current global leaders. Gretchen, I'd like to ask you, what advice do you have for future global leaders that you have learned that can help this next generation of leaders be successful?
I think that a generation ago, we would give different advice, and I think I grew up with different advice. It was like, you got to be tough, and you gotta be fearless, and you got to be able to be the leader. And I really shift that thinking, I think, as time went on and you sort of learn that experience. And I think there's a couple of things that are really important for our future leaders. Practice humility. Practice humility. It is one of the things that I think gets us all so much further as a leader. People will follow. People want to follow when you can help walk in their footsteps. You live in those lived realities and embrace that. I think that's a very important one. I think that, we talk about risk taking. I think about being fearless. I think future leaders, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to take that leap of faith. And you're not going to make it every time. I've never made it every time. I've never stuck the landing every time. But you know what? I know how to get up. And I know how to practice, and I know how to do it next time.
Wow.
And I think that if I can encourage the next generation of leaders to just be fearless in that, it's the resiliency that you get from that. And that actually, I think, also makes you, a phenomenal leader from that perspective as well. So I think those are just, a few things. And the last maybe I'll just close with is I'd love to see more of is grit. And, grit is something that is, you can practice it, you can learn it, there's leadership classes on it. But what I mean by grit is just that tenacity to just persevere. Yeah. And, you're going to have roadblocks and you're going to have things in your way. But if you just have that tenacity to persevere, that gets you prepared for whatever is going to come. And that gives you that resiliency that we all aspire to have. And what, quite frankly, I think people really look for in leaders in times of good and bad. So that's, I think, a big change from maybe old time on like leadership books to now current time. I think it's a different way to lead, and I think people really look up to that.
Well, we're modeled on so many great leaders that we stand on the shoulders of, like the Honorable Congressman Louis Stokes, who was our founding chairman, who I always like to mention at our summits, because leadership starts with humility. Kobe Bryant, the late, great Kobe Bryant. I've been listening to a lot of his interviews lately, and I'm just so inspired by someone who has that grit and tenacity and inspires others to have that, to show up, to work harder, to do all of those things. And instead of complaining, just trying to get to that next level and to lift those up around you.
Yes.
To bring people with you, because they may not even know they have the opportunity. They may, so help bring folks along with you.
And thank you for saying that, because I think we all as leaders have obligations to do that. And that's how we're going to help, is lifting all of those next people up. Yeah.
Gretchen O'Hara, Cisco, Splunk.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
All right. Thanks.